Out of the various concepts and innovations that were birthed in the crucible that is the modern history of warfare, very few are as cold-blooded as one specific concept. I'm not sure whether it has an official name. I've seen it get referred to as moral horror or moral terror, and I will stick with the latter, both for the sake of convenience and because that's how Colonel Kurtz in the 1979 movie Apocalypse Now referred to it.
Horror and moral terror are your friends. If they are not, then they are enemies to be feared.
And I'd say it's a fairly apt term for it. In short, the concept of moral terror boils down to taking the concept of ends justifying the means and taking it to its logical conclusion, specifically in as far as fighting an adversary goes, and this largely provides a post-hoc justification for engaging in all sorts of despicable acts in order to terrify and beat down your enemy into submission. I did mention the Francis Ford Coppola's movie classic for a reason, as it features a monologue on that very topic, and how it seemingly contradicts the civilized nature of some that make use of moral terror for their own ends, to commit and view atrocities as a tool to be used. At the same time, the contradiction does make sense. Yes, on one hand, it can be said that by and large, humanity had advanced past the level of savagery, although on the other hand, one could argue that we had never abandoned it in the first place, and we simply found a way to refine it and use it more effectively. On a macro scale, war itself is an exercise in this refined, tactical barbarism. It is nothing more than a strategic feat of mass murder in order to wilt down the enemy defenses. However, to crush the morale of one's foes, some go much, much further. In a sense, Operation British was just that, moral terror. To casually gas civilians en masse, lob the now derelict space habitat at the Earth, and have the gall to attempt it again upon seeing that no one raised the white flag of surrender from the smoldering ruins. Another example is the 30 Bunch incident, courtesy of Titans, among many others. Now, with these war crimes staining the records of universal century history, what can a young, budding space autocracy do to top that? Quite a lot, actually. For one, they brought back summary executions via guillotine. Heck, they made them public too. Was it practical? No. Was it an effective tool of terror? Definitely. If you want to terrify the populace, displays like this are what you do. It's much more personal than nerve gassing a colony or nuking a planet. Zanscare Empire knew that and were using moral terror as their a priori strategy. That's why they made these giant ships with wheels to tread through Earth, to crush anything in their way as something bug-like, something lesser than human. Beheading and vehicular manslaughter aside though, Zanscare Empire had devised something much more malevolent, both in concept and in practice. The Angel Halo. Being the Empire's superweapon, you'd probably expect some OSHA violations, some mistreatment of civvies, some mistreatment of people who worked on it, something like that. However, what you wouldn't expect is that they would embed 20,000 people within the walls of the Angel Halo, alongside one new type imprisoned in the middle of it. I'm not going to cover the additional details given in Crossbone Ghost, since A, that one isn't fully scanlated yet, and B, my intention is to cover the Angel Halo as it appears in the show. Now here's the thing. Up to this point, you could rightfully point out that while the things described thus far would be vile at best, there is nothing particularly terrifying about one of many wartime atrocities within Gundam. Well, nothing that would take the cake, so to say. Correct, and this is the point where I will attempt to make the case for the space donut being fucking terrifying. See, the true horror of the Angel Halo is how it operates. The show is nice enough to give more naive and softened explanation, which is probably the most PR-friendly way to putting what I'm about to describe. See, the kid-friendly explanation says that this abomination of a structure is simply capable of erasing mankind's capacity for violence. Although in truth it's something far more sinister and deplorable. Despite its grimness, the show is nice enough to not get too graphic about it, but what the Angel Halo does is that its waves cause drastic psychological regression, extreme mental entropy to put it in other words. If you're lucky enough to be far away from its effective radius, you're gonna get some heavy headaches, heart palpitations, nausea, illusions, involuntary recollection of traumatic events, and feelings of misguided apathy at most. But if you're slightly less lucky, you're in for a fate worse than death. If you thought Rocco turning Camille into a lethargic vegetable was bad, this is on another level. As seen in episode 46, the initial effects manifest as the area right under Halo has its inhabitants enter a stage of deep sleep, and in this nigh comatose state, first signs of gradual cellular deterioration start to show. The observing forces of both League Militaire and the Federation remarked that at this rate, anything caught in that radius is more or less left to rot alive, all the while degenerating mentally as well. Uso's father even states that if the Angel Halo got closer, this process would have been much faster. One of the most appalling feats of medical malpractice of the 20th century remains the practice of lobotomy, and for a good reason. Via this barbaric method, many were, to put it bluntly, murdered, leaving behind semi-responsive dead husks that kept on living, as a monument to the heinous act. Now imagine a similar process, but completely devoid of any and all mechanical tools, trapping you in place and forcing you to slowly decompose into nothing but primordial soup, all the while ravaging what's left of your mind at that point. That is what the Angel Halo does. And it is for that reason that I could make the case for it being one of the most terrifying weapons in Gundam, conceptually speaking. Thanks for checking this one out. On the off chance you missed the memo in the community tab, the bird app, or my proprietary Discord server, I'll be a busy fellow this January. So barring the New Year stream and maybe some entries I pre-record and pre-schedule on the channel, I'll have to dial down on the output until things get a little less hectic. Have yourself a nice 2025. Do consider subscribing to keep up with the uploads, and this is the Shirtlad, signing out.